Hello. Can you? Sorry.
Hello.
Hi, Mukund.
Hi. Hi,
I think
so has joined as an attendee. Mr. Vishwanath, could I request you to share your email address? We have another link for you, using which you can register as an participate as a panelist. I'm afraid as an attendee, you will not have access to your video camera and the microphone. Okay, can I have your phone, please? I'm pretty sure I don't need it. I just. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, got it. Thank you. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. No, you need it. Okay.
Oh, Mukund, I noticed that I could promote Mr. Vishwanath as a panelist, and I've done that.
Thanks for the promotion.
Sorry, we're just learning this tool, all of us.
No, same year. So I'm just also struggling whether I can fill in my name in a form and get.
The idea of smiling at a screen is really something we all have to live with, I think, for a long time.
I guess. So you want me to try out the share screen option quickly?
Sure. It should work. I think I don't see a problem there.
But it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Does
No,
what say?
actually, can you hear me, please?
Yeah, I can, Sanjay.
Okay, so you have to join as a panelist.
Yeah, he's joined as a panelist.
He's joined as a panelist because his.
Yeah, there is something called promote to panelist, which I just did.
Oh, okay, all right.
And it worked. I can see him under the panelist.
So
I just see whether make host
Soumya?
or make co-host will work. Yeah. I've made him the co-host. Now this should work, I think.
okay, yeah.
Try, Mr. Vishwanath, you try now? Oh, yeah. Yes. You can see your screen. Yes.
Okay.
That's great.
And I'll make it full screen also, just to.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. Is that good?
Great. Great.
Okay.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's Bell Dog. So let me know when I have to start.
Sure.
Maybe 5 more minutes.
Yeah, sure. So here's what I'm thinking. It will take me about 20 to 25 minutes for my presentation, and then we can have the discussion, right?
Yes, that's right.
That's perfect, isn't it? That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody must be struggling with a heck of a lot of Zooming and webinaring, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough world.
I suppose you yourself have been quite busy with giving a lot of webinars over the last 40-45 days.
I'm trying to stay away from it as much as possible. But
we're lucky that you're making an exception for us, then thank you.
No, not like that. Yeah, I mean, it's fun to share information and knowledge, but to make it limited is better, I guess. Preserves the sanity of all. This has been a good time to read also and to get back to a heck of a lot of books.
That's nice.
So has the BNP been able to work out its manifestos now?
Yeah, we're working on it, too, sir.
Also, you're working on it. It's still work in progress, is it?
Yes, we are working on. We have some which are on the public domain for review. We have one for Porakarmikas.
Okay.
We have one on the financial management of BNP accounting, and also we have one for the apartment dwellers.
Right.
We have a trees and a lakes manifesto in the offing. We are putting some final touches to it. We should hopefully be able to release it by the end of this month.
Okay.
And other issues also for women, for example, we are again drafting one. It's in discussion.
Okay.
Anything else which you think we should have on? Have
one is
a manifesto
obviously
on?
water and sanitation.
Sorry?
Water and sanitation, that would be very important.
Yeah. And of course on solid waste management also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we start?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll start with the introduction to Mr. Vishwanath Srikantaiah. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have Mr. Vishwanath Srikantaiah here with us today. Mr. Srikantaiah is a civil engineer urban planner with 34 years of experience in sustainable water management issues. Mr. Srikantaiah has dedicated himself full-time to solving water issues facing urban and rural communities. He is a trustee of Biome Environmental Trust, an organization assisting communities in water and sanitation solutions, a director of Biome Environmental Solutions Private Limited, an architectural firm specializing in sustainable design, as well as an adjunct faculty at the Azim Premji University. He is popularly known as Zenrainman, and he's going to speak to us today about water conservation and management. I leave it over to you, Mr. Vishnu.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. I'll just put about 20 to 25 minutes for my slides. I'll bring out some of the key issues which are challenging Bangalore vis-a-vis water. And I'll also try and talk a bit more specifically about rainwater and wastewater as I go along. And then I'm open to discussion afterwards. So I titled my talk as Water in the City and the city of Bengaluru. And try to understand why it is special. It's always good to begin a Sunday evening with a profound quote. So there's a profound quote. Those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it. Perhaps we should learn from what our forefathers have gone through in the city itself when we plan our next water management schemes to make ourselves resilient and sustainable. Well, the stories in the media, all of you from Bangalore would be familiar with. BBC says that the 11 cities most likely to run out drinking water, like Cape Town. They put Sao Paulo in Brazil as one and Bangalore as number 2. The Niti Aayog, which is the think tank for the government of India, suggests that Bangalore and Hyderabad are going to run out of groundwater this year, 2020. And then there is, of course, other news about 21 major cities, including Bangalore, running out of water. So is this running out of water true is something that I'll discuss as I go along. But anyway, this is the media narrative for a long time. So let me step back in history. And when I step back 3,500 million year old, because that's our history of Bangalore. If you go to Lal Bagh, you see the rocks there, geologically one of the oldest formations in India. And that's got a lot to do with the water situation now. For example, this rock, which is granite gneissic, has weathered over millions of years and has become capable of holding some amount of water in the shallow, unconfined aquifer. But in the deeper aquifers, where the borewells go in, it's not capable of holding large volumes of water. And therefore, you see that borewells go up to 1,800 feet, even 2,000 feet. And sometimes there's no water at that level also. That's got to do with the geological history of the place. And that history is 3,500 million year old. There's the second part of the history when the continental drift started about 130 million years back to about 100 million years back. You'll see that India and Madagascar, the green thing there below and Madagascar in purple, were at one point of time connected. And as the continental drift started 70 million years back, when you look at the figure at the right bottom, see that Madagascar has now drifted away and India has drifted away from Madagascar and is moving towards the Asian plateau. But it has left behind a part of the Sahyadris or the Western Ghats in Madagascar. And that part of the Sahyadris which has been left behind in Madagascar, which is a gap, is famously called the Palakkad Gap. Then you'd be wondering, why is this continental drift and that Palakkad Gap got to do with Bangalore's history? You'll figure out that Bangalore has this rainfall in May. The April and May showers are typical for Bangalore city. It's not typical for any other city in India. These April and May showers are because the wet, humid winds from the Arabian Sea rushes through the Palakkad Gap, comes up north, and in the evening by about 5:30, it starts to rain, the famous office rains of Bangalore. Right? This has got to do with the continental drift, and that's fascinating for me because it has also got a lot to do with rainwater harvesting. Because when the rest of India is sweltering under summer heat, Bangalore is getting its April and May showers, which are ideal for collecting and storing below the ground or storing and reusing. The history is also impacted by the fact that the British came here and decided that it was more salubrious than Srirangpatna or Mysore for establishing its cantonment. That had an impact on the kind of technologies that came into the city, and I'll come to that. But what has also impacted Bangalore terribly, which we have forgotten somehow, is the 1876 to 1878 famine. And this photograph, which I've taken from the web, is actually Bangalore city. And there were tremendous amounts of death due to drought and famine in the city. The lakes of Bangalore and the surrounding areas of South Karnataka went dry and were dry for 3 years. And it was not able to support a population of something like 80,000 to 1 lakh people itself. So this notion that the lakes of Bangalore can somehow support the water system of Bangalore is slightly a bit of a romantic narrative. And even a small population of 1 lakh, when a drought or a famine hits you, it's unable to support the lake systems, right? And this is the kind of tragedy that occurred because of the shortage of water also, because famine also has other causes, but for sure that the tanks of Bangalore ran dry for 3 years, the years of the Great Drought. And therefore, the Great Drought started to influence the city administrators at that point of time, and they built the famous Sankey Lake. But that Sankey Lake was not enough, and therefore they went to Hesarghatta River in 1894 itself, Hesarghatta Reservoir on the Arkavati River. So here starts the sort of disconnect between the lakes of Bangalore and its consumption by the city as domestic water to a faraway source. Hesarghatta, 24 kilometers away, 1896, used steam engine to pump water into the city to a place called Jewel Filters in Malleshwaram, Hebbal at that time, Malleshwaram now, from where water was distributed in pipes to many households. The per capita supply at that point of time was 55 liters per capita per day, and it was designed for a projected population of 2.5 lakh people, 2.5 lakh people at that particular point of time. We are one of the first cities to use steam engine to pump water to ourselves, and this sort of dependence on technology and engineering feats, as reinforced by Sir M. Vishwesvaraya, this was Diwan Sheshadri Iyer, has continued till the present times, and we've been pioneers in terms of the use of engineering technology. And so this is how Hesarghatta looked at one point of time in 2014. Unfortunately, Hesarghatta is more or less dry and has been abandoned as a source of water for Bangalore because the Arkavati River to that point has run dry. And the Arkavati has run dry because groundwater extraction around the Arkavati has reached such tremendous proportions that the rain that falls on it is no longer capable of running at streams or rivers and coming into the reservoir. It just goes to meet the soil moisture deficit, and it cannot even meet the groundwater deficit. And here's the other thing with the population in Bangalore, and this is up to 2014 as I'm sharing with you, but you know that somehow there's an incredible link between water infrastructure and the population of the city. So when the water scarcity is there, the population doesn't grow at a rapid pace, but the moment water comes into the city, it seems to absorb and grow quickly, absorb all the water that's generated to it, till we have to run the next infrastructure scheme. This chasing has been going on, and we are now at around 14 million, catching up on the water. One another significant impact on Bangalore has been the plague in 1896 to 1899. This drove the planning of the city. Baswangudi came into place, Malleshwaram came into place, and more importantly, the sewerage system started to get attention as a plague remedy. And therefore, the sewerage system dates to the 1890s also. That's the legacy we have, both with water supply and sewerage, which is more than 100 years old. And therefore, we have to reinvest in cleaning up that infrastructure too, apart from building new ones. And so the city forefathers started the first specialized water supply and sanitation unit in the whole of India, which is the BWSSB in 1964. BWSSB is the first, followed by the Chennai, Hyderabad, Delhi Jal Board and all. But we are pioneers in terms of creating institutions of governance for supply of water to the city. The BWSSB was created because it was felt that the local city improvement trust board was incapable of having the technical knowledge of getting water to the city because it had to be obtained from far. This creation of this institution as engineers who supply water also has an impact even now. And therefore, when people talk about water running out for the city, we must remember that Bangalore gets its water from the Kaveri now. And there are 4 reservoirs on the Kaveri in Karnataka: KRS, Kabini, Hemavati, and Harangi. Broadly, all 4 operate to make sure that there's enough water in either the KRS or Kabini, so that the water then is released, comes to a place called Torekadinahalli, as you can see on the figure in the right, and from there it's pumped to the city of Bangalore. Water will run out for Bangalore city if the entire 4 dams on the KRS, Kabini, on the Kaveri go dry. That's most unlikely even in the foreseeable future. But the fact remains that Bangalore as a city has to start to pay a lot of attention to the Kaveri Basin, the catchment area in Kodagu, in Hassan, in Chikmagaluru, to make sure that the forests are protected, that the rivers are protected from sand mining and pollution, so that the city itself survives. The compact between the city of Bangalore and Kaveri has to be reinforced. We have to get it into our heads that we need to not only bother about the lakes within our city, but we should bother about the river Kaveri and make sure that action is taken to protect the catchment of the Kaveri as we go along. Luckily, in terms of data, we are very privileged. The city has the Karnataka State Natural Disaster Monitoring Center, KSNDMC, which is one of the best tracking of weather services available for the city as well as the state. It's the best in India. And I'll tell you why it is the best in India. For example, it tracks the reservoir level real time on a day-to-day basis, except Sundays when they go to sleep or when they're off work. But you'll see that items 6 and 7, which I've highlighted in yellow, these are of concerns for Bangalore City. What it tells us is, as of yesterday, 2020, KRS had a level of 14.22 TMC feet of water, and Cubbon had 4.43 TMC of water, much more than the reservoir level last year. Important to note that the total water supply needed per month from the KRS and the Cubbon together is about 1.8 TMC only. That 1.8 TMC is enough to suffice the needs of not only Bangalore City, but Ramnagara, Mysore, and other cities dependent on the Kaveri for water. So as of now, as on date, as of yesterday, we have enough water to last us 7 months, and the monsoon is yet to come. So it's unlikely that Bangalore is going to run out of water at all. There will be a shortage for sure, but not the running out of water completely as in Cape Town. So that's exaggerated. We have to be aware of that because we're getting about 1,450 million liters per day from the Kaveri now. And we're going to get an additional 775 million liters per day in the next 2 years or 3 years. 2023, we should get 2,225 million liters per day, right? We should also remember that we're not taking away a major chunk of the Kaveri allocation to Karnataka. We're only taking 11% of Karnataka's allocation with 50% of Karnataka's population in the basin of the Kaveri, right? So we're not taking away the waters of farmers or anybody else. It's, you would argue, the right of Bangalore City to get to this water from the basin itself. Remember also that from the 11%, 9% returns back as wastewater, treated or untreated, and is reused by farmers. So net, we are only taking about 2% of the total Karnataka's allocation of water for a 50% population. Also, we pay attention to rainwater, which falls on the city. Given this unique rainfall pattern in the city, as well as the total volume, 3,000 million liters per day comes on the city, 3,000 million liters per day. So there's a lot of potential to make sure that rainwater is harvested positively. Lakes have left blank because lakes, in my view, are not to be used as domestic water supply. They should be treated as ecological and cultural spaces. They should be protected and they should be managed, but we should not depend on them as direct potable water use. Lakes can recharge the groundwater and then become available as groundwater for use, but that will be a small component. Groundwater is very important. We are pumping out 400 million liters per day from about 4 lakh bore wells. To keep that sustainable is a big challenge. And with wastewater, we're doing a remarkable thing, one of the highest and the best wastewater transfer for agriculture project in the world. We're somewhere around number 3 or number 4 in terms of treated wastewater transfer for agricultural use, and I'll come and show you that. We as citizens of Bangalore should also become aware that we're responsible for the hinterland, which is drought affected, and somehow a compact has to be drawn for water and food security together with livelihood security so that we see the whole of the BMRDA area as one, and I'll come and explain to you about that. Some numbers, we have about 1 million connections from the BWSSB, roughly 2 million households. This number is not very clear. It will be clear after a survey. So about 10 million people to 11 million people are getting water from the BWSSB, intermittently as it may be. So roughly about 75% of the population of Bangalore is getting water from the BWSSB. The 25% who are not are dependent on groundwater. What we need to do in terms of democratization as a party which starts to advocate the proper management of infrastructure of Bangalore is that we should need to get ward committee level transparency in terms of connections. How many households are there in a ward? How many of them are connected to both water supply and sanitation? And is there universal connection? If not, what is the goal for universal connection? The real challenge in Bangalore is in the 7 CMCs and 1 TMC plus the 110 villages, which were amalgamated in Bangalore to become the BBMP, the Bangalore Mahanagar Palike. Now the water lines and the sewage lines are extending themselves to these 7 CMC, 1 TMC and 110 villages. More properly, these 110 villages. We should keep an eye and make sure that all households in the greater Bangalore area are connected to the BWSSB as the first charge that we have to give for it. And the real challenge is that the water which is pumped to Bangalore costs 95 rupees per kiloliter to the BWSSB. Note the figure, 95 rupees per 1,000 liters. It is India's costliest water for any urban area. Therefore, we need a pro-poor policy where the connection charge, which is the largest or the biggest barrier, is adjusted and made sure that people are able to connect, which we have. We have a pro-poor policy, which we need to roll out in larger numbers. And so I've already mentioned about the 95 rupees per kiloliter cost. Groundwater, let's come to groundwater. We talked about the institutional water, which is from the BWSSB and the Kaveri. Bangalore is situated on a ridge. There's a dotted line which you can see. That's the ridge line between the Dakshin Pinakini to the right and the Arkavati to the left. The Arkavati Vrishbhavati, which joins the Kaveri. And you'll see that the pattern of flow and even the geology in both these zones are totally different. In the Arkavati Vrishbhavati, the flow is more from north to south. It's very dendritic, it's sharp, and it's a steep fall. In the Dakshin Pinakini, the flow is more from west to east. These are shallow lakes there. The groundwater is much less in the Dakshin Pinakini area. It's much more available in the Arkavati Vrishbhavati area. So even the city has to be treated for groundwater and for rainwater harvesting differently, and we have to understand the hydrology as well as the hydrogeology when we intervene with our policies and practices. Now, again, with the data, we're very lucky because the KSNDMC has 99 telemetric rain gauges in Bangalore city, and they're aiming to get to 196, that is one rain gauge in every ward. That would make it the densest collection of weather information real time, which is available to citizens and institutions in the city. No other city in India has this kind of facility. We should use this tracking of rain gauge and rainfall to better prepare ourselves for flood management, but also for rainwater harvesting and groundwater recharge, which is available now as tools. So here's a quick basic primer on why we need to do rainwater harvesting, even on a small plot. Let's take, for example, a 30-40 plot, 30-40 site. If it is unbuilt, and that's the figure to the left, you'll notice that when rain falls, only about 5 to 8% of the rainwater goes below 1 meter to recharge the aquifer. About 10% to about 15% would run off and hit the storm drains. About 85% of the rainfall would actually stay in the soil column and be evaporated or evapotranspired. Now, on the same 30-40 site, if you build a house, the runoff becomes 95%. The recharge is virtually zero. The evaporation, which is now evapotranspiration as we call it, is only about 5% or even less. So you see that the runoff has increased from 10% to 95%. This is one of the major reasons why we have urban flooding in many parts of Bangalore. And therefore, the rainwater harvesting policy designs itself to mimic what would have happened if the site was unbuilt. The site owner is to be made responsible for the extra runoff. He or she needs to collect and store the rainwater, excess rainwater, or to recharge it so that that no urban flooding is caused. But in the meantime, you get supplemental water either through storage or through recharge. That's one thing that's possible. And when we do an analysis of the rainfall pattern, we have nice Excel calculations. You find that even a small amount of storage, like 1,000 liters, as you see on the right chart, can harvest and make a house which is about 1,200 square feet in roof area with about 4 people in it, independent of the city systems for about 80 days. And if you get 6,000 liters, you're independent for about 180 days. So through these small tools, you're able to calculate for your own house or for your own apartment, depending on the demand, depending on the roof area, as to how much independent you can be about this from the city's supply. This data needs to get more and more into the public domain so people make an informed choice. The rainwater harvesting bylaw, which has been worked out on the data and the calculation, is one of the simplest in India, which suggests that for every plot, create 20 liters of storage or recharge per square meter of roof area, 10 liters of storage or recharge per square meter of paved area. And when you make a recharge structure, make it sure that it's a minimum depth of 3 meters. And every house owner can self-certify to the BWSSB that they have done this with photographs and a drawing. And then the BWSSB engineer, if necessary, can inspect and make sure that the bylaw has been adhered to. It's a self-certification process. There's no license inspection Raj that we want in Bangalore. That's how the rainwater harvesting bylaw has been defined. It can be improved by increasing the storage and recharge to 60 liters per square meter. That would make it almost perfect, but perhaps we have to do it incrementally as we go along. This has been the land of the Kere and the Bavi, and I don't have to tell you about the tank systems that we have built, our forefathers have built 1,000 years back, and the wells which have been built beautifully. But who are the people who actually dug these tanks and built these wells? These are people from the Bovi community or the Manvadar community who have skills in earthwork. Muniappa, Ramkrishna, Shankar, all these people. There are about 750 to 1,000 families who continue the tradition of cleaning wells, digging new wells. Can livelihoods be given to these people to make sure that they dig recharge wells so that they have an employment, they have livelihoods, and the city gets water security through making rainwater harvesting law and policy into action on the ground is one endeavor that's possible. Again, approaching water sustainability through livelihoods is a unique approach that can be taken up in Bangalore, which no other city is thinking of, because always we imagine water sustainability as some kind of a large infrastructure project. Not necessary, it can be a livelihoods project also. And therefore, where are the wells in Bangalore? And are there really wells, and do the wells have water? Well, there's a small listing of the 8 localities. There are many more localities where actually groundwater is available at 10 and 20 feet. And people are still continuing to use this water because it's portable. Some of them have been polluted with sewerage leaks. Some of them have been polluted with stormwater leaks, but a lot of them still continue to be used. The question is, can we revive the memory of the well and get more wells, especially in those localities which already have them? And then can we recharge these wells with rooftop rainwater after filtering it and putting the water into it so that the groundwater table comes up? I think we can do that as a movement in Bangalore if more and more people become aware of the well as a source of water and of the presence of the well diggers who will do the job for them. So here's how a recharge well is dug. You see the well digger on the left. They dig a pit about 4 feet in diameter and about 20 feet deep, and then they line it with concrete rings, precast concrete rings, which are made on the roadside, and then they put a grill or a slab on the top. A team of 4 people usually do a 3 feet into 20 feet deep well in one day, maybe at the max 2 days. Typical cost is about 35,000 rupees to 40,000 rupees. Now, one recharge well can put in between 1 lakh liters of rainwater to 1 million liters of rainwater in a year into the aquifer. That depends on the soil condition and the aquifer condition, but a minimum is usually about 1 lakh liters. That's a substantial amount of water. And so many people are now stepping forward to do this recharge. Mr. Balasubramaniam on the left picks his rooftop rainwater, which you see the pipe, it goes through the blue charcoal filter into the blue tarpaulin, which is the well. Now he draws all his water requirements from that open well. Mind you, the Kaveri water supply costs the city 95 rupees a kiloliter. Water from the well would be about 75 paisa to 1 rupee a kiloliter. It's a cost differential of about 95. Then there's a power differential. A well water would cost about 0.1 unit for 1,000 liters, whereas the Kaveri water is 2 units of power to get the water to the city itself, and additional 2 units to get it to the overhead tank. So 4 units there, 0.1 unit here. And then therefore there's a carbon emission. So recharging shallow aquifers, bringing up well water is not only good for the water table and for preventing urban flooding, but it's also good from a climate change perspective because you're reducing carbon emissions as well as energy consumption. And then you see the well on the right side. So there are many such examples that are now coming up all across Bangalore. I'll just walk you through some of them. One of them has been in Cubbon Park, where 7 old wells had been forgotten. These were cleaned by the Manvadar community, and they're now back in action and are providing up to 1 lakh liters a day. And about 80 recharge wells have been made. 74 recharge wells have been made, which recharges all the water falling on Cubbon Park to make sure that these open wells are full. And in theory, if Cubbon Park designs its landscape well, it can only depend on these open wells for water and be independent of any other water requirement. There's the wheel and axle plant in Yelahanka, where led by Ajay Singh, Mr. Ajay Singh, a dynamic officer. All the roof water was brought and left into a wetland, which you see on the left side, where the well is located. The wetland filters the water and recharges the aquifer, and these wells now give about 3 lakh liters to the wheel and axle plant and makes the wheel and axle plant independent of the BWSSB in terms of its water requirement for its production unit. Then there is the IIM, Indian Institute of Management, where there are about 64 such beautiful recharge wells linked to the stormwater drain, and here too the groundwater table has come up and the bore wells now give more water. Then there is an ideal gated community called Rainbow Drive on Sarjapur Road, which has made more than 200 recharge wells and has communitized bore wells. It has not allowed private bore wells. And through a system of metering and tariff, it has made sure that the Rainbow Drive is completely independent of the BWSSB so far for all its water requirements. This is a model because here it's not only rainwater harvesting and recharge, but also metering and tariff and also wastewater treatment, which is now an excellent example for the whole of India. And finally, this is an outstanding apartment called TZ of Vartur, 94 flats and villas, where they actually harvest all the rainwater in the wells that you see in the center, but also recycle the treated wastewater, mix it with borewell water and drink treated wastewater. The first such apartment in the whole of India. And this is again in Bangalore, and they've been doing it for about 4 to 5 years now already. So we need to look at stormwater drain designs differently. We need to look at all kinds of alternatives. Stormwater, for example, can just hold water and infiltrate into the ground, can have recharge wells and put the stormwater inside the ground instead of taking it away from the site and causing flooding elsewhere. The reviving of lakes also, which has been taken up by many communities, is helping the groundwater table. This one is Kaikondrali Lake. Just downstream of it is this large, beautiful open well, which is now supplying water to about 64 flats in an apartment. So if the city can imagine 1 million wells for itself, harvest rain, recharge aquifers, revive groundwater, and provide livelihoods to all these well diggers, it's well on its way to sustainability, it's well on its way to managing urban flooding, and it's well on its way to managing groundwater itself, right? The real challenge is now small sites with multi-storied buildings. As a political party, you should start to become aware that 30, 40, 30, 50, and even 40, 60 sites are now getting 4 to 8 apartments, flats. The building master plan and the bylaws have now to start to talk to the water availability and make sure that we don't make it too dense. So therefore, it's unable to provide water from itself, though it can do its own recharge and can have its own wastewater treatment plant, but that will not be sufficient in smaller plots. These are the big challenges before us. So lessons for apartments: harvest rainwater, use water efficient taps, showers, washing machines, WCs, meter for every flat, eco-friendly soaps and detergents in the kitchens, recycle wastewater and reuse it, rejuvenate lakes at community level, regulate groundwater better. But primarily focus on the BWSSB, make sure that the institution becomes more transparent, more accountable, puts all information in public domain, and then engages with the city and the citizens in a conversation on what its plans are for the future so that the city itself becomes water sustainable. Finally, focus on the Kaveri as a river, because we need a river basin institution to make sure that the river Kaveri, including its tributaries, the Hemavati, Lakshman Tirtha, all of them are good, clean rivers without any sand mining, without any pollution in them, so that the water sustainability of the entire Kaveri basin is taken care of. And that's the primary responsibility of Bangalore as a city. The last point that I want to bring to your attention is this wonderful wastewater treatment project full of challenges, where right now, for example, from the KC Valley, treated wastewater is being supplied to Kolar. About 440 MLD of treated wastewater will go to Kolar district. Here's how it is going. This is how the sewage treatment plants look. The raw sewage at the inlet points which are coming in, the raw sewage is taken. The parameters are noted and there's an online monitoring system, but it needs much more improvement to do that. Then some more raw sewage inlets for 2 of the KNC Valley's sewage treatment plants. Then the secondary treated wastewater parameters. The water is treated, chlorinated, and then after it's chlorinated and it's made sure that there's no pathogens that are there, it's then pumped out to the lakes in Kolar about 30 to 35 kilometers away. The one to your left is Lakshmi Sagara, and then it cascades down to the other lakes, starts filling up these lakes, then recharges the shallow groundwater, and from here farmers pick it up to use it for crop cultivation. This now has started to fill more than 55 tanks in Kolar. It started to fill more tanks in Chikbalapur. It will fill tanks in Anikal. It will fill tanks in Ramanagara also. One of the world's largest projects, driven a lot by many politicians who are very keen on getting it done, challenged by environmentalists, necessarily challenged, but then cleared by the Supreme Court, being monitored by the Karnataka High Court with an environmental committee, and still work in progress in terms of the quality of treatment that is needed before it's sent to these lakes. Constant learning on the job, making sure that there's no adverse impact. But there's been an ecological regeneration and more farmers are demanding this. So the point is that the city can function as a fertilizer factory if it only lets domestic sewage, which is treated, into these lakes. Industrial effluents have to be kept out, which is a big challenge for the Pollution Control Board. But if that is done, then the entire hinterland can be regenerated. And it is my belief that with drip irrigation systems and sprinkler irrigation systems, as you see here, 64,000 hectares of land can be brought into cultivation with assured water supply, less use of fertilizers throughout the year. It's not just one seasonal crop. You can grow crops and fruits and horticultural products for the whole year, which is going to be a big boon for the farmers who are actually facing the impact of climate change and of collapsing groundwater tables. So there you see the treated wastewater goes and comes in wells, and that's the produce that is coming from the farmers, cucumbers in this particular case. So when the city becomes aware of all its water and wastewater responsibilities and draws up a compact with the river from the river basin and with the farmers at the downstream end who use treated wastewater of adequate quality to grow crops, then we are well on the way to sustainability and resilience. Because if we do not learn from history, the only thing we learn from history is that we do not learn from history. Hegel. Thank you for your time. This great journey of water literacy is very important, and I'm sure that BNP will actually be at the forefront of the charge of making sure that Bangalore becomes sustainable and water resilient, which includes wastewater. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the educative section about talking to us about the different ways that we, treat water. I think it's the fact that we are using so many water treatment plants, which, to be honest, I drive past them on the way to Mysore. You'd see a few to the left, but you don't really know what they're used for, and that the information that it's directly affecting and helping the farmers in the nearby regions is very, 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 very interesting to note. So at this point, I'd like to invite the participants to share any questions that they have. While we wait for some questions, I have a couple of questions of my own. So what can, as you mentioned about apartment complexes and how it's important to, as a group, to do certain activities, what about us living in individual houses or us living in hostels, and could we in our own homes take simple measures to reduce our own water use? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, every house should switch to aerators in their taps. Make sure that the WCs are water efficient ones. Make sure that you use eco-friendly soaps, not the soaps which have too much phosphates in them. Right now, a lot of soaps are becoming available which are Rita or soap nut and soap berry based. And if you start to do that, then you can reuse the gray water from your washing machines, from clothes wash, from the kitchen sink, reuse it in the garden itself. Yeah, and then of course you can do rainwater harvesting. Many things that can be done at an individual home level, which is very easy to do. The challenge becomes in the apartments, where you have to now start to move towards community action. But finally, you have also to look at institutional actions. It can start from a single tap. It can go all the way to the city itself. Yeah, what can an individual house owner do to harvest rainwater? Well, one of the things is to go to the Vishwanath theme park in Jayanagar 5th block, and they'll give you a free advice and a plan on how much water you can harvest in your home, right? Either you can store it in the sump tank or push it into the recharge well, or do a combination of both. People can do that. And if you have a 100 square meter roof area in your house, you'd get the equivalent of 1 lakh liters a year to harvest. And it's a one-time investment, and then there's a minimum maintenance, a lot of water that comes in for productive use. So you can do a lot with individual house water harvesting, house owner-based rainwater harvesting. Any more questions? I'd be happy to answer that.
Somebody, Sangeeta is asking about a rooftop well. Is it a separate structure or linked to the existing rainwater harvesting piping? Is what she wants to know.
Yeah, so it's called a recharge well, and a recharge well is separate from traditional piping. What you do is you pick all the roof rainwater from the pipes and you push it into this small well, which is 3 feet in diameter and about 20 feet deep. It takes care of all the roof rainwater and pushes it into the shallow aquifer. If your area has a good aquifer, like in Indiranagar or Koramangala or Rajaji Nagar, then you can actually start to draw from the well and start to use the well water itself, right? So it becomes both a recharge well and a draw well. Otherwise, it just pushes water into the aquifer and benefits your bore well, and it benefits the surrounding groundwater table. So recharge well is different from a regular rainwater harvesting pipes.
There's another question on from Ajay Rathi.
Yeah.
Why does the government not push for biodegradable washing powder or dishwash so that at least the wash out of the house is clean?
Well, because the detergent industry and the soap industry are really big, they're run by MNCs. So eventually it's only public pressure which will push them to start to make eco-friendly detergents and soaps. The government is under several pressures, as you can understand. So obviously it has to become a larger movement from citizens, and then political parties have to push for it. At least the first step is to start to remove phosphates from detergents, because these phosphates are ending up in our lakes and eutrophying them and making all these things grow, right? So that's one thing. And grey water harvesting, which is a point which should be done in all individual houses. The first thing to do is to shift to eco-friendly detergents, and then it becomes very easy to use the grey water for other uses, like for example, toilet flushing, or for the garden, or for even swabbing the floor. It's possible to do grey water harvesting, Mr. Ashok Kumar.
Does the recharge need to be repaired every year?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Actually, if you put filtered rooftop rainwater into a recharge well, it won't need any maintenance at all for another 10 to 20 years, right? But suppose you're putting in water from storm drain, then perhaps once in 2 years, you need to call the well diggers to just desilt it and clean it up. That's absolutely a very easy thing at all. You don't need to repair it at all every year. If it's made with good rings, it lasts you 35 to 50 years, Mr. Pradeep Bhai.
Lalitamba has raised one concern about using eco-friendly solutions for vessel washing and so on. She's saying she used it last year and had issues with bandicoot which dug up the areas.
Bandicoot which dug up the areas. Bandicoots are a huge nuisance for manholes. They're a nuisance everywhere. And well, you need to use rat poison to get them, unfortunately. If you're so inclined to protect their lives, then you'll have to switch back to your traditional detergent. But this is the first time I'm hearing it. And, every case is individual, and we've got to do something about it.
Srikant, our General Secretary, has a question. How easy or how difficult is it for the BWSSB to monitor whether households have implemented functioning RWH and recharge wells?
Well, now they're launching a survey, and they will be going from door to door to just have a check on whether the rainwater harvesting system has been implemented. If it's implemented, is it working, and does it meet the norms that is there? So that survey should start from next month. Well, ideally, there's a water meter reader who reaches every house once every month. So it should be possible to get the BWSSB to make sure that good rainwater harvesting system is done. But there's no substitute for citizen participation. If you want to mislead the system, then it's always easy. But if an active citizenry wants to do the right thing, it can do that. How to reach Manwadars? The Manwadars, we have a website, and I'll just, it's an open source website which has been made with the help of Wipro, and I'll just type it in. It's called bengaluru.urbanwaters.in, and it has a list of all the Manwadars who are able to do the recharge well job. Mr. Pradeep Bhai had this question, and I put the website there. It's got a lot of further information which everybody's welcome to use.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have two questions. See, I stay in an apartment and I see a lot of individual houses, independent houses. So I used to see one individual house where the overhead tank just leaks after, I don't know, they don't switch it off, even in spite of, I don't think they have these automated controllers.
Yeah.
So what does it make? After 2.5 months of follow-up, the inspector came yesterday and asked me, it took 2.5 months of follow-up.
Yeah.
And I told him, do survey whether every individual house or commercials have the automated controllers to stop water wastage.
Yeah.
To stop water wastage. That's one part of it. Yeah. Second is, why don't BWSSB also take up these aerators as one project, and like rainwater harvesting and all this, because they are big bets. These aerators, why don't they subsidize and make it mandatory for all the hotels, for all the individual houses, wherever possible? Why don't they take it up as a project? What does it take?
I'll answer two of your questions. One, the BWSSB itself is very much deficient in terms of human resource power. as an institution which has 1 million connections, they're struggling with manpower and human resource power to manage the system. We are not looking at the BWSSB's capabilities and building up the financial and human resource capabilities, which we need to do that. The automatic level controllers have just now become mandatory for all houses to have, including from the overhead tank. But there's only so much that the BWSSB can do. Otherwise, you get into an inspector Raj where you have to keep on monitoring the citizens continuously, right? So there's a tough question there as to how many times you can enter a private premise and demand the leaking overhead tanks. Citizen responsibility is also something which we need to push forward. So it's a difficult one. I think slowly the BWSSB will push for it for its application. The second point that you made was on aerators, right? Why do we look at subsidies all the time is also something mind-boggling, because these aerators are very cheap, right? They're only about 100 rupees to 200 rupees, right? So every household can have it. Unfortunately, in India, the manufacturing of water fixtures is not governed by efficiency. If the government of India actually and the state government made sure that only water efficient fixtures could be sold, then it would solve the problem at societal level. That challenge is being taken up. It's going to take some time before it gets into place. Yeah. It really burns you up, Lalitamba. I know if you see water being wasted, you really get so upset about it. But one
upset till Vishwanath, my blood boils. My blood boils.
Yeah, so I'm just using positive words, but you need to figure that out. And I mean, it's a slow process. Let your blood cool down.
One is a household. This one. What does it take for the hotels to implement it? I'm sure with one initiative of BWSSB giving norms. Along with BBMP, they can do it because we work with NTR hotels and it is going through. Yeah.
Possible.
Thank you.
Some people are worried that about the foundation of complexes whenever there is RWH in big housing complexes. Is there any concern or consideration?
We're very lucky with the kind of soil that we have in Bangalore. It's pretty much a hard base soil that we get. Weathered rock is not really very loose or clayey, unlike, say, for example, Chennai. And unless you're building on an old lake bed or on a wetland, really you don't have to worry about the recharge wells, because these recharge wells take the water to a minimum of 20 feet deep, which is actually deeper than any normal foundation. And the real cause to worry is that part of the soil has clay and part has sand. That does not occur in Bangalore. And there's been not even a single reported problem with foundation cracks or anything at all with recharge wells or open wells for the last 30, 50 years. So I don't think we have to worry about it.
So if the recharge well is not near an aquifer, how does it still work? It's a little.
So a recharge well is made, its purpose is to push rainwater from the rooftop or stormwater into the aquifer, right? So depending on the layout, it can, and depending on the soil lithology and the hydrogeology, it can absorb at certain rates. It can be 1,000 liters an hour. It can be 10,000 liters an hour, varying from place to place. So it will put the water into the ground. Now, if you're in a valley or if you're in a good place where the groundwater table is up, like for example near Cubbon Park, then you'll get water at 20 feet and then you can start to use it.
Okay.
So it serves both purposes.
If it is deeper, then the recharge will be slower, but will be for a few.
If it's deeper, the recharge will be faster.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
So if you get to 30 feet, your recharge rate should be higher. In certain areas, you may strike clay and therefore the recharge rate may be low, like in the Dakshin Pinakini area, but it's a case-to-case basis. Normally, the well diggers look around the locality and see whether there are old open wells existing, and on that basis, they estimate what the aquifer looks like.
Sangeeta is asking that again. I think Litamba's concern again. Sometimes I see people waste liters of water while washing cars. They say we are paying for it, so it's not my problem. Can they be held responsible legally?
Well, we haven't got to the maturity stage of both citizenry and governance. For example, in Australia or in California, in America, during special drought years, there's a ban on watering your lawns, right? And there's a ban on certain forms of use, and there's a general collective responsibility which makes sure that that doesn't happen, and there's societal pressure not to make it happen. Plus, the institutions go around finding it. But in a city of 14 million people, it's a bit difficult to do that for the institution. Like I said, the institution is not really with human resources, not enough human resources to be able to do that. It should be done in an ideal situation.
Pradeep has a question. Many households and small businesses use a water pipe to clean their front area.
Yeah.
How can we inform them the value of using other ways of cleaning their front yard?
Yeah, so what's happening is we're a society in transition. Till the 70s and 80s, we had enough and more water in our open wells. So the old-timer Bangalorean or the old-timer Mysorean, we're used to a certain cultural way of life, putting the rangoli, washing the frontage and all that. And now if you raise the prices of water, which is the best signal for conserving it, then there's immediate political opposition and a public uproar. So unless we get the pricing right, we will struggle with the misuse of water. It is only to be water literacy which will slowly reduce this, unfortunately.
Valli is asking if borewells can be recharged directly.
Well, the jury is out on that one. If a borewell has yielded water and is now dry, it looks like that it is capable of getting recharged. If it's a good borewell yielding water, my advice would be don't recharge it, because if it ain't broke, why fix it, kind of a thing. But if it's a borewell which has never yielded water, so it was a dry borewell right from the beginning, it's unlikely to be capable of recharging. There are several people who go about recharging borewells. Their experience is that it actually does work, but I am a bit cautious on it. I'm saying, if it's working well, don't recharge it. If it has worked well and stopped, then recharge it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any further questions?
Yeah, that's good. So the website is a source, bangalore.urbanwaters.in, and everybody can note it down. There's a wealth of information, and it's always constantly being built up, and happy for you all to use it. And if you want to send in some more information on the website also, we'll be able to build it up much better. It's a citizen's effort there. Good. I think we've done well on time, and we've stuck to the 1 hour panel, and that's been really nice, right?
And thanks all for attending.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.